So we won't talk too much about immunology and dendritic cells, and we'll get straight down to...
I wanted the whole thing to be about dendritic cells.
He wanted it all about the cells. In Colette's introduction there, she mentioned the Access Programme that you came to. Before we get to the kind of impact of exactly what you're doing now, which we heard all about today in the School of Biotechnology, it was wonderful. Tell me a little bit about what Access Programme has done for you.
So I think the Access Programme, and also subsequently the chance to go on and do a PhD, the way I try and describe it allows me to be strategic. And you know me quite well, over 20 years of interaction. I like to do things that could have a societal impact over 10, 20, 30 years. And to be able to do that, you need to defer gains in the short term, earn less money, make sacrifices in terms of maybe progression in your career in certain ways, because you can try and do something big and bold. And that kind of ethos came from the training and also the concepts around the Access Programme. It's like, can you give up something now so you can do something bigger and have a societal impact into the future?
Yeah, and when you spoke to me earlier, the quote that I have written here that you said about the Access Programme was, Access points people in the right direction to achieve their maximum potential. And I think that probably resonates very well with where you started off and where you ended up. Tell us a little bit about the drivers for your decision then to go on and do a PhD after you finish your undergrad.
There's several that, kind of accumulate over time. I guess three of the biggest ones were work placement, intra. Coming from a background where I had nobody in my experience who ever worked in the pharmaceutical industry or had a science degree. I was lucky to work at Wyatt, which is now Pfizer, in Clondalkin, and I had an opportunity to have a lot of people with PhD backgrounds give me advice. A lot of them pulled me aside and said, you have some potential here, and why don't you pursue something that could be more impactful into the future? And also because I did my undergrad at DCU, I knew the culture quite well. I knew I could fit in and apply my kind of principles. And the faculty and support of people like you, who was one of my lecturers, and Sandra O'Neill, who was my PhD supervisor, I kind of had a very good instinct for what I could expect out of coming back and engaging for another 4 years. My ideas and my approach to science would be incorporated and welcomed in this type of environment.
Yeah, and I mean, we had the pleasure of you giving a guest lecture to our undergraduate students today over in the School of Biotechnology, and it was a really inspiring lecture. And I think that one of the things that came across really well was your idea of being able to think of something and just go and do it. And I think that's something that kind of led you to your jump to Harvard directly out of your PhD. And you've built a career in the last 15 or 20 years on the back of that. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about the impact of what you're doing now. So what are the kind of things that you're working on? COVID has been a huge game changer for you, your work on mRNA vaccines. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what the impact of what you're doing is going to have.
So actually, I finished my PhD in 2009. My original plan was to try and give back and stay local, but there was no jobs, no postdoc positions around. So literally the only places I got job offers were at Harvard and Yale. I was kind of taken aback by that. I interviewed for 4 positions and got offered 4 jobs. And I was like, okay. And actually I came back and talked to Patrick McDermott here at the Education Trust, and he was like, go to Harvard. And he was like, and that's one of the reasons I got actually advice from here, because I was on the Alumni Council at the time as a PhD student. And I applied the same principles strategically. It's like, what could I do over 10 years, 15 years to try and add back? And so my lab and my team are very focused on this concept of what we call precision vaccinology. And what we do in this case is we look at the most vulnerable people in society, what could have the biggest societal benefit, and try and create technology specifically tailored to them. So, for example, is how can we immunize children the day they're born? Who are the people most affected by viral infections? Older populations. And these are really hard problems to try and attack, because you have to basically take your time. You're not trying to be the first, you're trying to be the best. And then what we can do is we can take some of these technologies and then pick new challenges to go apply those technologies to. So we were lucky to be involved in the generation of the cheapest, most used vaccine in India for COVID-19. It's the Cobravax vaccine we collaborated with Peter Hotez on. It costs $1 a dose, we think, right now. And that whole vaccine was heavily influenced by our team's ability to show which technologies would work best together. And I think 150 million people have received that vaccine right now. And so that's
you skipped over that now. Oh, I think 150 million people have. 150 million people have received the vaccine, and a huge amount of the work that went behind that was David. So I think that sums up really well the kind of impact of what you're doing out there. I know, and you did this when we did the talk today to the students. You talked about some of your successes, and you were like, and then the government gave us 9 million to just do this thing over here. And I think that's just, you know, that's just who you are as a person. But I think that those impacts are really important, and it shows the value of what we try and achieve here at DCU and how we kind of send you out to do all the good stuff. So some of the other stuff that you talked about then today.
So one of the areas that I've been really trying to push and be more influential on is not just to come up with an idea, but actually create a prototype that could be translated into the world. And one of the things you need to do in that case is you need to broaden out your expertise. So my team, we patented about 25 different technologies in the process, but that means we have to be able to develop patented technologies while we publish and get the money and train the staff. So you have to be more responsible. And then once you have that capability, and a lot of our patents are around these molecules called adjuvants, they can be added into vaccines to boost an immune response. And so one area that actually was really interesting in 2018, 2019, I had an opportunity to work on a project that I never really thought about before, was trying to develop a vaccine against fentanyl. And luckily, a lot of the technologies that I developed and principles could be applied to this area. So the concept is really interesting in that a person who comes across fentanyl, they may die due to respiratory distress because the fentanyl turns off their ability to breathe. So if you can create antibodies against fentanyl, fentanyl can't get to your brain because the antibodies sequester in your blood, in your periphery of your system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the US, of course, is facing a massive opioid crisis.
But then I actually pivoted my whole lab over the last 5 years to the fentanyl crisis in the background. And what we've been able to do is we've been the first team to create a fully patented vaccine in this space. And we received $20 million from the US government to bring it all the way to phase 1 clinical trial. And just last month, we have a company that's been founded to potentially take this and commercialize it into phase 2. And to me, that just comes from the baseline of like, create new things, see what comes, and what societal issue can you go and attack. And that's been only achievable through the kind of ethos that comes from DCU, is like, can you think of something big and bold that you can contribute to? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it comes from you lecturing me about dendritic cells, even though we don't want to talk about it.
Well, I mean, I'll take a little bit of the credit, David. I won't take all of it. So one of the things when I spoke to you earlier on today, you told us about this toolbox really that you've developed, which is pretty much going to give you the potential to make a vaccine to absolutely anything.
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems that most companies that spin off universities on a single technology is that technology then becomes sequestered in the company, no one else has access to it. Does that make sense? So that's a reality. That's actually good. That's a good sign. So what I'm always doing is I'm always 2 years, 4 years, 5, 10 years into the future going, okay, if this works, great. It can spin off. It can lead to success. But then I'm going to replace it with my next thing. So the way of doing that is our team is constantly innovating. We do a huge amount of drug discovery. And we have a whole pipeline of new inventions that are constantly coming out in our team in all different cases. We have mRNA technology, which we're spun off to a new company, and we're developing vaccines for any disease that other partners want to come and talk to us about. And I'll pick things that I think are societally valuable, then I can partner with others who have other interests or other areas they want to target. So this kind of allows us, again, to be strategic and take on more responsibility and contribute in a way that's just above and beyond what we're doing.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned to me earlier when we spoke about this was the idea of team science and the idea of the team around things. And I mentioned our new Life Sciences Institute, for example, which is about how we put teams together to work collaboratively on the problem. And you really emphasized to me the importance of doing that. And we see that in the work that you've done and the benefits of that.
For example, my postdoctoral mentor and Olivia and I are able to found one of the first vaccine centers actually specifically focused on vaccines for distinct populations in the whole Harvard system. And we have a team of like 60 scientists all working in this space. And the ability to mimic and advance that type of work just unlocks so much potential because you're all working side by side towards single goals. And I think that type of work can be replicated in institutions like DCU, have the basic ethos locked down, and we build the structures on top of that, just as more PhD students, better collaborative science, then you can just unlock so much potential. And that's the kind of science that I like to do, and so hopefully people can replicate it.
Yeah, I'm glad we're completely aligned then in terms of the initiatives that we have coming down the road at DCU, particularly around the Life Science Institute. We need to wrap up our 10 minutes, so we have our little counter clock in front of us and our 10 minutes has run down. Can I just say, like, DCU is incredibly proud, the School of Biotechnology and the faculty are incredibly proud. I'm personally very proud of all that you have achieved. Access has given you that springboard to go out into the world and do great things, and I think you're a wonderful example of what DCU can produce and send out into the world to do good and have impact. So thank you so much for being here and sharing with us today, David.
Thanks for the invite. I had fun. Thank you.